Hello from Board Developer. It's Business Ahas, a show about the eureka moment that launched you into the next level of success. I'm here with your host, Jim Hayden, and I'd like to welcome our amazing guest this month, Andrew Kolikoff. Andrew is a multiple C-level executive and company founder. He's been featured on the cover page of USA Today for his invention that was licensed by the NFL, the MLB, NBA, and NHL. Since that time, Andrew has dedicated his life to behaviorally elevating and transforming leaders' lives. Now, Andrew is an inspirational speaker, author, leadership guru, and coach. He brings with him his wonderfully diverse experiences. 10 plus years of nonprofit board chairmanship, former chief science officer, university adjunct professor, and national director of business development. Andrew's true gift is in how he delivers that change and growth with everything he's involved in. I'm really excited to hear Andrew's business aha. Take it away, Jim.
Oh my gosh, Danny! Thank you so much for such a great intro to Andrew. I can't tell you how excited I am to have him today. When I first had the opportunity to meet Andrew, I think the smile has been on my face every day since then. And I remember sometime last year, we got invited to a football game where the New York was playing football, and we didn't have jerseys. So we showed up to this little place that had the game playing, and Andrew says, "Here you go. You've got to wear these jerseys. If you're going to go watch this game here, you need to wear these football jerseys." And we were so welcomed by his friends that he's known for many, many years. And it was such a warm feeling to be welcomed that way. So Andrew, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being a dear soul to the core.
Well, the big question is, are you now a Jet fan, a New York Jets fan?
Of course, I'm a New York Jets fan.
Yeah. It's not easy to be a New York Jets fan. For those that are listening, I run the New York Jets fan group here in Phoenix, and the New York Jets haven't been a good team well, when your hero is Joe Namath, you know that you've suffered a long time.
Well, I invited a dear friend, Pat Freer, to join us. And I said, "Hey, want to join us for wings tonight? We're going to go watch the game." And he said, "You're going to go watch the Jets game?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "There's a group that watches the Jets game. They've been my favorite. They've been my favorite team since I was 13 years old." So Pat had a great visit. So Andrew, thank you so much for being here today. I'm joined by our co-hosts, Carrie Sleazer and Danny Kahn, on Business Ahas. And obviously super excited to have them as well. As you all know, they may have seen an episode before of Business Ahas. I don't know what the aha moment is, nor am I shared what the aha moment is at all. So I'm going to hear it for the first time, just like the rest of the audience. And I'm really excited about hearing what Andrew has to say with us this morning. And we'll look forward to questions you might have or comments as we get going. But with that, Andrew, take it away. I literally have bated breath.
Well, I sense, Jim, since we've spent some time together, you probably know, because I talk about it all the time. And in my delusional mind, it's a pretty big aha. And it's something I share with all my clients and enthusiastically with everybody I know. And that I'll weave it into a story. So I had an incredible experience in my life. I'm a former chief science officer, university adjunct professor, 2 graduate degrees, worked my way up the corporate ladder in the New York City metropolitan area. 43 years of my life I spent there. I live in Phoenix now. And I burnt out by the time I was 38, 39 years old.
Whoa.
And made a big career change where everybody thought I was crazy. After all that, I wound up going into business development, which I listened to your series with Mikey Maynard, which was brilliant. Mikey is a dear friend of mine and a brilliant man, a very passionate living soul. And he talked, if you've missed that, if you guys have, you listeners haven't listened to that episode, you need to listen to that episode about business development. And I went into business development and I loved it. And now I'm going to get to the aha. So I had this idea, and as you know from what we just discussed previously, before the podcast and during the podcast, I'm a big sports fan. And I had this idea for a product in sports that I did nothing about. I mean, I had a career, I changed my career. And one day I meet somebody in a bar and I tell them my idea. And a year later, I'm on the front page of USA Today, top fold with a photograph. And it was the day Sprint and Nextel merged, and I was the top story of the day. And I got to build this big company. I got licensing from the NFL, baseball, basketball, and hockey. And I was young still. And I had this
front page of the paper.
Front page, top fold.
No way.
Yes, I can show you. Well, I mean, when I went in, I didn't know that was going to happen. I knew they interviewed me, and I went into 7-Eleven to get my coffee. Notice how I say coffee. And my knee literally like gave. I was like, oh my God, I'm on the top. I didn't know I'd be on the top fold of the paper. And I got licensing from all the leagues, and there was a whole story around that. The aha really came to me not only during, my clients were owners of teams, and they're billionaires. And if you have never met a billionaire or been around one, they're different cats, completely different cats. And the big thing I learned from them, that the aha really came, I really felt it and lived it later, which I'd like to talk about, was when I point to you, I mean everybody, you, your career, your business will only ever be about as good as you are. And about as good as you are, it's about as good as it's ever going to get. Yet everything society will teach you is that you need to get an education for it, training for it, money for it, people for it, technology for it. The list is endless in what you need to do for it. But the happiest, most successful people are working on themselves almost as much as they're working on it. So then that begs the question, what are they working on? Well, that's actually what's in my book in Amazon. And it's really one thing I often say is, if you're not practicing something, what are you getting good at? And people usually only practice something related to their hobby or certainly their career. But what they don't usually practice is being, knowing themselves better than most others know themselves. And leaders, I say, about 90% of all leaders are really just people in positions of authority. They really are, they don't really know what leadership is. So the aha for me, which I later truly felt, because what happened down the road of that story, and I was in, Sports Illustrated and the New York papers, was it didn't end well. My partner turned out to be a pretty unethical guy.
Did it not end well for Sports Illustrated because it was the swimsuit edition? I heard it might have been the swimsuit edition. That's why it didn't end well.
Well, yeah, that wouldn't start well either, Jeff. So
especially at 58 now, right?
Yeah, as we would say in New York, forget about it. So, yeah, so it didn't end well, and I wound up not exiting in a way that I really thought it would have turned out, and it was very, very painful for me. And what I had to learn for me is what I had to be responsible for why it turned out the way it did. And when I looked back, everything they taught me, the billionaires, came true, that my company was here and I was here. And I needed to really grow up a lot, to really be at the level of the company that it was. And subsequently, I've spent the rest of my life dedicating my life and energy to leadership. I really had to do the work on myself, and I decided that particularly servant leadership was something that really resonated with me because of the family that I came out of. I grew up in this incredible home. My home was like Grand Central Station. My parents lived their lives in service, and it wasn't religious. It really, anybody that needed a meal, a place to stay. My home was the place of joy, laughter, love, and safety for the world. So servant leadership was something that I just went down that rabbit hole, and I dedicated my life to the study and practice. Listen, everybody, practice, because you can never change your stripes, how your behavior, until you practice something regularly to the point it becomes a habit. And listen, servant leadership is something that has to be authentic within yourself. It isn't something that, well, that's how I want to project myself in the world. One thing I learned also as a leader, you have to align yourself with yourself. How you speak, your actions, your habit have to match your thoughts and your feelings, how you really are. The more authentic you are, and if that's something that really is important to you as a person and a leader, then servant leadership probably is, the way you might want to lead. And it is obviously something that I do a lot of public speaking about. So that was really my journey, that I was on the top of the mountain. I built this big company, and I had to learn how to completely evolve into that person they told me I was supposed to be, that I wasn't.
But you weren't. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So how does that sit with you? Is that something you think, Jim, in your travels, that you have met people who, because I said 90% of leaders, I believe, are people in positions, simply just people in positions of authority. They don't really understand what leadership is. And let me give you an example, Jim. So just one of 1,000 things. So I often will sit down with one of them and I'll ask them, I'm like, when you walk in every day, how do you wish to be seen? And very often, not all the time, but very often they have to think about it. Well, I want people to think that I'm fair, I'm honest, that I lead by example. They have to think about it. And I tell them this: if you have to think about it, then you don't have intention. You're not showing up every day with the power of intention. Because think about it. If you show up with not how you intend to be seen versus showing up where every day you remind yourself, you walk in the door, this is how I want to be seen. Well, what are the odds that you'll be seen that way because that is your intention? Much greater, much greater. So there's so many things to practice as being a leader that most people, it's what they don't know about what they don't know.
Would you say, so the two words that really resonated with me, Andrew, when you said you need to just be. And when you said you need to just be, for me said, how many people never are just to be? They're always doing something to be a different expectation. So that really resonated with me. And then when you said practice, if you're not practicing something, it will never become a habit.
It's true. And I think you pretty much nailed it, Jim. It really is what I often say. It's how you be. You have to practice being. And I know it may sound woo to some people, but I promise you, this is what leaders do. Leaders who really practice doing it. And the greatest power you can ever have is to really know yourself better than most others know themselves. And when I do a lot of public speaking, I ask people in a room, how many people really know themselves really, really well? And usually most of the room raises their hand. And then I prove to them, everybody in the room, in less than 3 minutes, how they don't. That most people, I say, have a macro understanding of who they are. I want to be in love. I want to buy a home. I want to travel. I want a nice job, based on goals and dreams. But what they don't know and they don't truly understand is, why do I often make a decision like this when I'm posed with that? Why I actually was so driven? Why, the whys. And when you know yourself really well, usually the answer to the most difficult challenges you're ever going to face in your life, personal or professional, ultimately come from within inside yourself. You're going to listen, you're going to ask for help and advice, but ultimately you have to make that decision. So the better you know yourself authentically, why you do these things, why you're so, all those things, you will make a better decision. So being is what power is. And you must dedicate time and practice in your life to that as much as everything else you apply to it.
When you said servant leader, I started thinking to myself, is that a cliche? Is that just a kind of the new buzzword? Is it term that's used out there? Oh, he's a servant leader, or she's a servant leader, or you need to become a servant leader, or I'm a servant leader. And I'm wondering if people really even know what it actually means.
So it's growing. I think the answer is no. I think most people, when they hear it, they form in their mind what they think it is because they haven't read about it, studied it, practiced it. So what they do, like anything anybody would do, is when they hear something they either haven't heard before or know much about, they form what they think it is and an opinion about it. Servant leadership is something that has to come from within, and it is something you must practice. And it is something that must be authentic within yourself, or it will never work. It won't work. And
how does somebody do that? Walk me through how somebody can introspectively decide themselves, I'm going to work on and practice on being a servant leader.
well, first, I really think it takes some soul searching before you even make that decision. Is really, how do you want to live your life, and how do you want that to align with how your company is, right? And if that is something that you think you want to be something
To
that is
be.
authentic to yourself, then what you do is, a good thing to do is that you can take a course in it. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Ken Blanchard. Ken Blanchard, I think, wrote the 10-Minute Manager. He's written very famous books. He's dedicated the rest of his life to servant leadership and courses in it. So
Has he dedicated his life to servant leadership based upon his actions or his words?
That's a great question. And I'd like to tell you, I know Ken, and I know for sure. So I don't know Ken, but from what I can tell, based on his previous books and his messaging and his lessons that he passes on, I think it is authentic. For me, I went down the rabbit hole of studying from the greatest sages of all. I started studying the Tao, Tao, and reading the Tao Te King. Dr. Wayne Dyer, who, if everybody has, read his books, amazing person. He dedicated the last years of his life to Taoism. And so Taoism expands your mind. And I went down all these rabbit holes because I believe the sages have been telling us how to be for thousands of years. We just came up with something in our minds that we didn't need to necessarily align what leadership needed to be with how to better be. And, if anybody's ever read the book Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor of Rome, that book is everything about servant leadership, everything about it. So this is not something new. This is not a buzzword. This really is about aligning the best, most principled way to be, and aligning that. Once you work on this, everything around you becomes a projection of that.
That's fascinating.
I hope I answered your question.
You did, and I think that if people really take to heart and listen to the words of, for you to understand what to be means, to practice, to understand what a servant leader is. But let's kind of be frank, though. Not everybody can be or may have the desire to be a servant leader, and that's okay. That's perfectly okay.
If it's not authentic, I tell them straight up. If it isn't something that you think you could make a way of life that you can authentically live by and own, then you do not want to practice it, because it won't be authentic and people will see it, know it, and the culture will be reflected from it. How many cultures, how many companies talk about how great their culture is? They have a ping pong table and you could bring your dog, but the company, nobody's really happy there. It's almost like a facade, servant leadership. There are people that do it, that create a facade, and there are people that do it where they truly are amazing companies to work for.
They live it every single day, and they live it, and it's natural. It's not forced.
Correct. And that is basically how I live my life. It took for me to be on the mountaintop and then to get kicked in the teeth, to realize that I needed to own what they were telling me. And I didn't own it. I didn't own it. I didn't practice, and I didn't do any of those things they told me to do. Wasn't necessarily servant leadership, but it was, working on me as much as I was working on it. And it took that descendancy from the mountaintop for me to realize that if I was ever going to get there again, this time I'm going to do it right.
So the good news is people don't have to learn the hard way like you did.
No, and that's why I do a lot of public speaking about it. That's why I've made it my mission in my life, that everywhere I go, I'm talking about it, I'm writing about it, I'm coaching about it, I'm helping people live a better life, live a happier life, live a more authentic life, be successful doing it. That, believe it or not, and we don't, this is something people can go research. The most profitable companies on planet Earth are servant-led companies.
Fascinating.
Go look it up. And it really, and it hasn't really caught on. People aren't super motivated to do it. And I think the reason is, and I could be wrong, Jim, is it's a big life decision. You're asking to do heart surgery with yourself. And a lot of people don't have the courage to say, sign me up for heart surgery.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people don't do it. They don't.
Wow. Wow.
So, Andrew, you talk about being at the top and getting kicked in the teeth. What was like some specific skill sets or characteristics or values that you realized like, ooh, I need to work on that and practice? And then how did you pursue that?
So there were a lot of things. Let's just talk about one that I think everybody can relate to. Positivity. I think everybody wants to be around people that are positive. I was showing up at work at 5 a.m. And if anybody knows New York, there's the long commute. And I was coming home late at night. And it was affecting everything in my life. And most importantly, it was affecting my positivity, my joy. I never showed up with joy.
Wow.
And I look back at that now and I'm like, you fool, Andrew. You thought it was about hard work. That's what you thought it was about. And people who tell you, just work hard, and everything, you know what, guys? That's not the answer. It's not the answer if you want happiness and all those other things too. And I wasn't applying, and Jim, you know me. I'm an immensely positive person.
You absolutely are. And I think that when people talk about being positive, I often will say the words, if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, go back to bed. Nobody wants to see you. That's a great question, Carrie. I really love the one that I think everybody can relate with, which is being positive, Andrew. I'll tell you, Andrew, I am so excited that you could be with us today. I mean, it truly touched my heart. I had a little like goosebumps on goosebumps when you say the word for a person just to be. I don't think I've heard those exact words, and then just pause. You just need to be, so thank you for doing that. Thank you for having such an impact on me. I hope those folks that are watching can impact on you. And Andrew, you mentioned a little bit ago about your book on Amazon, so got to have a plug. So name of the book, and obviously
Yes.
we'll make sure to get a link to it.
Well,
Yes,
given that
please.
you're giving me a plug, I'm going to give you two.
Woo.
So the book is called The Success Secret: What Happy, Successful Leaders Never Tell You. It's in Amazon. You could just type my name in, Andrew Kolikoff, Kolikoff. And also, if anybody is interested in even me coming in, speaking, I do a lot of public speaking. I weave it into stories. Or they want maybe to transition some of their company, some of their team, just go to Aurelius. Interesting, I mentioned Marcus Aurelius, AureliusTransformation.com. And I didn't go to school for this. I have 2 graduate degrees. But I practice this so much. I took myself to my own school, and it is the art I put in the world now. It is the best thing I have ever done.
For those that haven't had the opportunity to read Andrew's book, and just visit with Andrew and have a conversation with Andrew. And here I guess my third plug. If anyone wants to spend some time with Andrew and learn more about him as a human, as a friend, he doesn't have an agenda. And I would encourage that. So Andrew, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for being part of Business Ahas. And I truly, with every bit of me, can't wait till we get to see each other.
Thank you. I've really appreciated this.
Thank you for joining Business Ahas, brought to you by Board Developer. Please be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share. All the things we love to do. We'd really appreciate it.